A TV screen buzzed to life as the conductor entered the small cabin. He had learned to ignore the words being spewed at him. It was all propaganda, he knew. The planetoid he had his small station on had turned on the four others almost as soon as the cataclysm happened, and nothing changed since then. With a deep sigh, the man started clicking buttons on his control surface, listening to the telltale noises. The thrusters coming to life, slowly humming, spinning up. The stabilizers whirling away at a constant speed. The couplers coming to life, creating air pressure in the chambers behind him. Then finally, his steering console lighting up with a faint blue glow. Everything was ready. The conductor took some time to check on the cargo. He was hauling 4 cars today, all to the 4 different planetoids. The route was long and arduous, but he had faith in himself. He had been doing this since the first year of the new world. With everything ready, he sat down in front of his steering console and planned the route. The closest planetoid requested more medical aid, not a surprise. He was to land it in a particularly rough part of the planetoid. No station, not even landing strips. With another deep sigh, the man started inputting the travel data. His console beeped and booped with every command, and after he was done, he reviewed the information once again. Everything seemed fine. The autopilot would bring him in close, up to the edge of the atmosphere. Then he would take over, planning the course one step at a time, as the natural forces demanded. Pressing the finalizing button, he laid back in his chair. Perhaps the most interesting part of his demanding job was seeing the cataclysm. His train came to life, slowly gathering speed on land before lifting almost directly up, leaving the atmosphere of the small planetoid with incredible speed. Due to all the technology crammed into the gigantic train, the man felt nothing of the immense forces on the vehicle, although was more than aware of them. Back in his time, the children of all schools learned of all the effects leaving the atmosphere could have. Before his mind could throw useless information at him, his train left the atmosphere and entered the center. As always, the man's eyes widened at the sight. This place would always show something new to him, which seemed a daunting experience at first. Now, he just enjoyed the show. At the very center of the event, a whirling tornado of fire and debris slowly turned. It was standing vertically, although the man knew it was aligned to the magnetic poles of the 5 planetoids, once a single, gigantic planet. Around the fire tornado flew bigger chunks, mostly large rocks, apparent asteroids, and other space debris. These were parts of the core of the once standing planet, cooled down in the vacuum of space as the cataclysm erupted. Today he noticed something new: nebulae. Clusters of space dust flew lazily around the fire tornado, seemingly uninterested in its forces. The nebulae were almost everywhere, except the most used trade routes. A sudden memory leapt at the man. He was a boy again, watching the very same TV that was shouting its static at him now. In it, the president of Canalopia, a long-forgotten country of the old world, was speaking. He couldn't remember exact words, but he did feel the same chill run down his spine. The young boy he was looked out of the window, half boarded up. The dust storm had returned, blocking sight on almost everything but the closest spots hanging from a thin string outside. They were banging together with incredible frequency, creating a dissonant noise that irritated him. Then the TV went silent. He knew this meant something bad. Glancing back at his mother and father, who were shouting his name at that point, he noticed the emergency latch was open to the basement. The boy, almost mystified and out of touch, slowly walked towards the opening. His father's rough hand drew him into the basement. Then, there was silence. A sudden beeping from his control surface brought the man back to the present. "Yes?" he asked, his voice barely awake.
This is border control of the glorious Rama. Identify yourself.
A rough male voice answered the radio signal. "This is train 0058, scheduled to entry at 10:01. Goods include medical wares, supplies for the government, as well as for the refugees. The man said, his droning voice starting to annoy even himself. After a few seconds, his reply came.
Welcome, train 0058. We appreciate your help. Do you require any assistance?
The man on the other side of the radio asked, his tone changing from rough to welcoming. The conductor knew this phenomenon all too well. No, thank you, border control. I will send over my flight data as well as my planned route, the conductor said, then broke the line. With a few clicks, he sent his data to the nearby station, floating a few hundred kilometers away from the surface of the planetoid. A single beep signaled the reception of his message. The train was barreling towards his intended destination, and the conductor had to return to the present, taking hold of the flight controls. As ever, he was more than careful when landing. The multiple 1,000-ton machine was larger than most villages on the planetoid, and he had to make sure no one would get injured as his thrusters burned, slowing his descent. After landing, he heard a massive cheer. Looking around his cameras, he could already see the gigantic crowd that formed around his train. The planetoid's inhabitants would react to every package arriving in such a way. Walking to the back of the train, the man started thinking about the way of life here. Most inhabitants were forced to take up a religion, the Rama, and forced even more to practice it. The system worked, and most people there were happy with the religion. Those who weren't had long before left. Finally reaching the last car of the train, the man spent some time decoupling the car, then let it float on its own thrusters. Looking over the supplies quickly, he made sure everything ordered was present. He would be the one taken to court if something were missing, even though he was nowhere near the packing of the car. Finally, he opened the side entrance to the massive car. The leader of the planetoid, Rama, was already standing there.
Welcome, conductor. I hope the gods had gifted you with a pleasant journey.
The old woman said with a faint smile. The conductor bowed to her before answering. They have, Rama. I hope they have gifted you with a pleasant day too, the man replied formally. He had long ago learned the customs of the planetoid. Veering even a few words away from the given script was taken as a war crime on the glorious Rama. The claims were mostly ignored on the other 4 planetoids.
I will now sign your documentation,
the old woman offered. The conductor silently passed the paperwork over to her on an old binder. Within minutes, the cargo was checked, then given the green light. The conductor hid his joy at leaving the planetoid all the way to the edge of the atmosphere. The place somehow creeped him out beyond words. The strict rule, the odd, almost ancient traditions, they would not have taken hold on the old world. This is not the old world, he reminded himself. The planet's in pieces. Whoever was strong enough to control a given piece made the rules. No single body of government, that was the hardest part, he thought. He could remember the glorious president, the president of the old world, when the planet was still in one piece. One man, one voice, one power to hold the people together. That was how it should be, he thought, not for the first time. Before his mind could barrel down the political rabbit hole, he sighed, letting the thought go. With some care, he planned the next course. The furthest away planetoid was next, Tremang, a free, open world. The plotted course took him around the center, an event he was more than happy with. At least staring into the pure, elemental destruction made him forget the old world, when everything was better. The inhabitants of Tremang were more than careless. The train could enter the atmosphere without once being checked. But it was their way, the conductor reasoned. The cargo was dropped off, mostly luxury items which were affordable to the planetoid's interesting inhabitants. There were less than 100,000 people living on the planetoid, the conductor knew. Their wealth had come from the old world, since their part of the exploding old world held most of the capital. They were lucky, he thought, as he left the atmosphere. The day wore on. The conductor visited the other 2 planetoids, Erodicus, a place of hard military command, which had 3 border control checkpoints, as well as military cover for any entering spacecraft found in need of protection. There were pat downs, heavy searching of the cargo, and checking everything painstakingly slowly. But the conductor was found clear, and the cargo satisfactory. The ultimate god general had thanked him personally, as the cargo was dropped from the chains of cars on the train and left on the planetoid. The other planetoid, Zeram, had requested military goods, an odd step, but one the other governments allowed, with heavy surveillance. They were known for their passivity. The planetoid had even argued against having any communication between the others when the Council of Governments was first thrown up by the politicians of the planetoids. For them to order military equipment on this scale scared even the conductor. Despite his fears, the entry to the planetoid was as smooth as ever. No questions, no hold-ups, nothing. He dropped the cargo, then went on his way. Not even a single person came to check it out. Returning to his own planetoid, simply known as Industry, the man parked his train. The planetoid was the heart of the five. Here, most of the industrial parks of the old world remained, and produced more goods than the other four combined, then multiplied by 10. This place was the place to be for a young man, he knew. Yet, he envied the others, as ever. With deep, dark thoughts, the man laid down on the floor of his control cabin. The next day was starting soon, and he would have another trip to go on. His last waking thought was of the center. What would it hold the next day?